I don't want to do this. I don't want the season to be over. And here we are talking about the finality of it all. Duke basketball loses in the Final Four. They collapse. Houston on to the title game. Our Duke basketball season is over. Oh, no.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Thanks for being here with us today on Monday, April 7th, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics, talk a whole lot about Duke men's basketball, and the season is now over. I hate having to talk about this with the Blue Devils falling 70-67 on Saturday night in San Antonio at the Final Four at the hands of the Houston Cougars. Kevin Connelly from Ball Durham will be us on the program to break it all down. Still just doesn't feel real. Feels like it's been a bad dream. Feels like every time we wake up, it's going to be, Duke's going to still be playing a little bit later tonight in the national championship, but that's not the case. The careers of Cooper Flagg, Connelly, and so many others likely finished as Duke basketball players, and they aren't able to get the job done. They aren't the 2025 national champions. So much to dive into and discuss. We're here for you each and every day on Locked On Blue Devils. So if you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review on the Apple Podcast platform in particular. And then also you can watch our show each and every day. We're on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like these videos, and share it with your friends. So without further ado, we bring him on into the program. The aforementioned Kevin Connelly is here, man, and we just can't find the words. We can't process it all. Duke loses. Their season is over.
Yeah, JJ, I mean, I'm still stunned. I'm still surprised. We'll try to sort everything out as best we can here on this episode. But I think first things first, I'm still stunned, and I'm still trying to process what I'm stunned about. Am I stunned that they lost, or am I stunned the way they lost? And I think obviously there's a little bit of both. Now, I still think this was the best team in the country. I firmly believe that regardless of who wins,
100%, yes.
This Duke team was the best team in the country. Don't tell me Houston was the better team on Saturday night. They weren't. Duke outplayed them from the start of the game until the minute 30 mark, probably even further on than that, till the minute mark of the game. I think there's a lot of things that went into this. If you told me going in Duke was going to lose to Houston, or even in the national championship they were going to lose against Florida or Auburn, I don't think I would have been surprised. I think, those are three really good teams. Those are the three other best teams in the country. I don't think there's any debate about that. The four best teams in the country got to the Final Four this year. I just, it's the way it went down. Now I say, if you told me that they were going to lose one of these games, and I wouldn't have been surprised, but I'm telling you right now, I'm still surprised that they lost. I know that's kind of like a lot of word salad right there, but let's get into it, man. There's a lot of things to get into here.
Yeah, I think that's so true, though. I mean, are we stunned because they lost, or because how they lost the basketball game? And the more I sit here and kind of think about that thought, it probably is the latter, like how they lost this basketball game. Going into it, it is the four best teams in the country. We know how close the margins are going to be in a game like this. And yes, Duke was favored in this, but right from the jump, Houston had a 6-5 lead. They didn't take the lead back until the very end of the game. Duke was winning this basketball game for 35 plus minutes of the action out there on the floor. So the fact that they did somehow, some way, at different points in that second half, find ways to lose it is the most stunning part. Everyone wants to talk about the fact that over the final 10 minutes of the basketball game, Duke only made the one shot from the floor, a corner three-point jumper for Cooper Flagg. That was it that they were able to do offensively. Houston, they just wouldn't go away. I saw folks like Isaac Trotter, one of our buddies from CBS Sports, calling Houston just the cockroach that's not going anywhere. They're going to be in it the entire game, and that certainly was the case there. I don't, being so successful offensively for the first 30 minutes of this basketball game, we felt like Duke's going to be the first team for sure that's going to score 70 plus against this Houston Cougars defense, and that just was not the case.
Yeah, all right. So first off, in getting into that, I think you credit Houston because they never gave up. They believed the entire way they were going to fight for a full 40 minutes until there were zeros on the clock, and it worked out for them. Your point first about the offense. Yes, it was really bad, those final 10 and a half minutes. However, and this is with Duke fans that I've been talking with since Saturday night, losing never crossed anybody's mind.
No.
I don't, until probably the missed free throw from Tyrese Proctor and the foul on Cooper Flagg. I don't even think losing was in the minds of a lot of people, even after the Sion James turnover and eventual putback dunk from Houston with 25 seconds left. But especially when you talked about that last made field goal, Cooper Flagg's corner three, and then the next possession he has the block that lands what would have been about the third row if there was baseline seating at the Final Four. I think everyone thought the game was over.
Yeah.
He hits the three.
I definitely did.
He comes up with the block.
There were less than 3 minutes at that point.
There was about 2 minutes. I think he made the three with 2:14 to go, and the block came with maybe just under with just under 2 minutes to go. I mean, that it like no matter. I feel like no matter who you were rooting for, if you were a Duke fan, if you were a Houston fan, if you were a neutral observer and just a basketball fan, like right there, game over. But no, it didn't happen. You eventually have the miscommunication on a three-pointer, but we still have a lot of stuff to get to before that, because I think on that possession, Houston made a two, and then they had the reach over for the technical foul. But we'll get into that. But just that made three by Cooper Flagg, and I tweeted it out from Ball Durham a couple minutes before that. Tyrese Proctor had gotten fouled, and he was going to the free throw line. I think he made both free throws, and the thing was, make these two free throws, get a stop, and then score. And they did it. And I thought that the game was over. It wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't. Houston was able to find a way to win this basketball game. They're going to be playing later tonight in the national championship game against Florida. Late in that second half, myself and so many other Duke fans, to your point, Kevin, we're not thinking Duke's losing. We're just like, let's get to the final buzzer. Let's see how Duke can fare against a Florida team that had knocked off Auburn a little bit later tonight. You're already thinking about how Duke is going to handle Walter Clayton Jr. and the phenomenal basketball player he is, but that was not the case. Duke falls in heartbreaking fashion. We'll continue our conversation trying to figure out how in the world that happened after we take our first break here on today's show. Locked On Blue Devils here today, brought to you by our friends over at TurboTax. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes are waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with the TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while getting you real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible, file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can have the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. TurboTax is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, so we've got Kevin Connelly here from Ball Durham. We're talking about the Duke basketball loss in the Final Four against Houston. What's kind of the next point you want to make on this, Kev?
Well, I skipped around a little bit because after that Cooper Flagg three, Houston did make a two-pointer. Then Tyrese had the turnover. Houston made two free throws, but then it gets down to five, and Duke matches them because Cooper Flagg goes to the free throw line, makes two shots. Then Sharp gets fouled by Kevin Malawatch, back to a 5-point game. And then it's the technical foul for reaching over the baseline on the inbounds pass. And Knippel makes a free throw, pushes it back to a 6-point lead, and Duke gets the ball. But Knippel goes in for a layup, gets it blocked. And then they had the miscommunication on the defensive switch between Cooper Flagg and Sion James. Emmanuel Sharp hits the three-pointer, and then it was Sion James's turnover that led to a putback dunk. And JJ, I don't know how many people have brought this up. I don't think I have publicly either, so I'll say it first here on your show. When Sion James turned the ball over, inexplicably, I might add, because Houston had just called a timeout after they were able to cut it to a three-point game, and Duke still had a timeout in their pocket, so he easily could have called a timeout, not being able to get the ball in bounds. But even with that turnover, I think the biggest thing that hurt Duke was Malik Wilson missing the three, because Houston went for the tie as soon as that ball was turned over. If that three-pointer goes, it's a tie game. There's about 25 seconds left. The shot clock is off.
Yeah.
Duke has a timeout.
Would have had the final possession.
And Duke has the ball. And they either score on the final possession or go to overtime, and who knows what happens. Instead, that doesn't happen. Duke doesn't grab the defensive rebound off the missed three-pointer. Houston's able to put it back up with Tugler, and then Houston's forced to foul Duke on the inbounds. Tyrese Proctor misses the free throw. Cooper Flagg gets called for a foul, and Jawan Roberts makes his two free throws, and obviously Duke has two empty possessions. So if that three-pointer goes and it's a 67-67 game, the outcome could be completely different. And it's crazy to say that, because even with the missed three, the offensive rebound, and the dunk, Duke was still winning at that point. They might have been better off tied than they were ahead one.
I agree. I certainly agree with that, because then you still have to go to the free throw line in that scenario. And then, of course, it's Tyrese Proctor who's going to the line. And I just think we all had a bad feeling when he's the guy going to the stripe with how he's been shooting it in the NCAA tournament and down the stretch there. They kept showing his percentages and talking about it. And for whatever reason, Tyrese Proctor missed it with the game, with an opportunity to go back up three in that scenario if he knocks down both of them.
But what I mentioned at the top of the show, with those two free throws he hit coming out of the under 4 timeout with about 3:40 left, he gets fouled. He's going to the line to shoot two. He makes them both. And that's what I was talking about, that scenario with a score, stop, score. And that's what they did. He made both free throws. They got to stop, and Flagg hit the three to put them up 9, but it still wasn't enough. And for Tyrese Proctor, this was not one of his best games. And I mean, he was awesome the first weekend of the tournament. What was he, 13 of 16 from three-point range? Yeah. I mean, simply incredible. But you look at the last two games in which Duke had their season come to an end. And last year against NC State in that Elite Eight game where he was 0 for 9 from the floor. And then obviously in this game here in the Final Four, he's 2 for 8, missed all 4 of his threes, and 3 for 5 from the free throw line with the big costly miss on the front end of the 1-and-1. So a tough couple of ways to end your seasons in back-to-back years for Tyrese Proctor.
Yeah, the images that we're having to see from this, from the celebrations after the fact, the disappointment from the Duke side of things is just gut-wrenching. A lot of great work that you're able to see if you're watching with us here on YouTube, talking about this Duke basketball team and kind of down the stretch against the physicality of Houston. Big conversation being had about the play of Duke's big fella, Kamon Malawatch, and what very well could be his last game as a Duke basketball player. After the fact, we're hearing the reports coming out from Senator Marco Rubio and the status of South Sudanese people in the United States. There's no telling what all was going on through the head of Malawatch as this game plays out. But regardless, that was really tough to see, especially, Kevin, after seeing how freaking dominant this guy was against Alabama. And throughout the tournament, he had only missed 3 shots the whole tournament.
Yeah, JJ, I don't want to get into really that political point because we don't know a lot.
Yeah, you and I know nothing.
Yeah, we know nothing about it. We don't know what he was thinking, if he knew, and the whole bit. So we're not going to get into that. But just from a pure basketball perspective, you said it great. I mean, in that Sweet 16 Elite Eight, I mean, outside of Cooper Flagg, he might have been the best player on the floor for Duke, defensively, offensively, pick and rolls, getting to the rim, being a disruptor, and there was none of that there. I mean, it was almost like, was he sick? Was he battling an injury? Like, what was going on? Because that was not the Malawatch we've seen in this NCAA tournament. And the fact, I mean, he's 7'2". He had 4 or 5 inches on anybody that Houston could have put on the floor, and he has 0 rebounds. And Duke gets outscored by 20 points in his 21 minutes on the floor, and he only takes 2 shots. The fact that he didn't get any lob attempts, that Duke couldn't throw the ball up to the rim and get him more involved. Yeah, I mean, it was his worst game as a Duke player, I think, and it's fair to say that this year. And it came at the absolute worst time. And before the game, I had put out an article on Ball Durham highlighting who I thought, outside of the freshmen in Cooper Flagg and Konnel, the 3 most important players for Duke in this game. And I thought I put Kevin Malawatch, Tyrese Proctor, and Sion James.
Yeah.
And none of those 3 players had good games. And you could obviously make the case the poor play from those 3 players is the reason why Duke's not playing in the championship game.
Without a doubt, Duke's season is over. We've seen the end of so many great players' careers wearing that Duke uniform. Now we start to begin to ask, what's next? We'll talk a little bit more about the loss as well after we take our final break here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today, brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I was surprised realizing just how much I was spending on things like food delivery, and now I'm able to budget smarter and save more. There's an all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Monarch Money is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, forward we go. Talking Duke basketball, the end of the season for the Blue Devils. Kevin Connelly's here with us from Ball Durham as Houston somehow, some way, finds a way to knock off the Blue Devils and advance to the national championship game a little bit later against Florida. Cooper Flagg had 27 points in the loss for the Blue Devils. He led Duke in every statistical category. What a showing it was from him. And Duke got a look for him at the very end of the game with a chance to take the lead back and win this game. Are you upset at all with the look that Duke got there at the end?
No. Was it the easiest shot? No. I mean, there was still time on the clock. I think they called the timeout with about 17 to 19 seconds in that range.
Right.
So I think they could have run something a little bit better for him. Obviously, it brings up all the other late game scenarios that Duke has been in with the ball in Cooper Flagg's hands, and they were unsuccessful against Kentucky, against Kansas, against Clemson, and now here against Houston. And funny enough, like, this was the first time they got a shot off in any of those situations, which is crazy. And I do want to get into something about Jon Scheyer in a little bit too. You know, I would have liked them to get the ball in Cooper Flagg's hands at the top of the key, right around the perimeter, kind of where Konnel caught the inbounds pass. And one thing about Konnel as well, the fact that he only got 9 shots in this game was criminal. I thought he was really good, especially in that first half. He was awesome. And the fact that he only got 9 shots, that was not nearly enough, especially with the way guys like Proctor and James struggled. And I thought we probably should have seen a little bit more of Caleb Foster, even though Foster was 0 for 3 from the floor. I thought he provided some really good minutes in that first half.
He was rebounding well, man.
Yeah, I thought we should have seen some of him in that second half. So am I upset with the shot? No, because number one, they got a shot up, and number two, it was Cooper Flagg who took the shot. I do think it could have been a little bit of an easier shot with a better play design than what they did.
Yeah, Cooper got to a spot. We've seen him make it from there before, and unfortunately it didn't go. Duke couldn't get the rebound. Houston finds a way to win this basketball game and move forward. A lot of people are talking about the fact that, you know, in Jon Scheyer's career, he had the opportunity to stand alone amongst everybody in terms of the first 3 years, the number of wins that you've got to start a career. Instead, he's going to be tied at 89 wins with Brad Stevens and Brad Underwood. 79-0 had been Jon Scheyer's record when Duke has a double-digit lead at some point in a game, which, to think about that for a second, is pretty impressive. That's 79 of his 89 wins to this point. He had at least a double-digit lead at some point in those basketball games. Wow. But man, just to have this one now on the record and to know that we're all hurting. I don't know that anybody's hurting more than Jon Scheyer right now, though.
No, I agree. And did Jon Scheyer have a great night in this game? No, especially in those last 10 and a half minutes. Probably could have put guys in better positions to win the game. Does it make him a bad coach? No. Does it make him is he the wrong choice now that Duke picked to succeed Mike Krzyzewski? No. But I will say this is going to follow him. This game in particular is going to follow him. It's tough when you win 35 games and you're the ACC regular season and tournament champions to call the season a failure. But I think it's obviously much more on that side of the spectrum than it is a success. Yeah. I don't think you can call this season a success despite everything they accomplished because how this final game ended. I think you look at
we were supposed to win it all, man. I mean,
yeah, this was the team. Yeah. Now, you can't predict the future and how long Jon Scheyer is going to be the head coach at Duke. I don't know if he's going to have a more talented roster. I don't know if he's going to have a more well put together roster than he just had here. And I think you should look at the first 2 seasons that Jon Scheyer was the head coach now that this game is in the books. His first season, I think that team met their expectations. That team was not a championship caliber team. They won the ACC tournament, which was a big thing, especially him in his first season. They win their first round game, and then they get a bad break in their second round game, playing a really good physical Tennessee team. And remember, in that game, Mark Mitchell didn't play because of an injury.
Right.
So I think that team probably reached its potential and reached its peak. Last year's team, I think, given the circumstances, could have advanced to the Final Four, but they were not a championship team. Let's be honest. If LJ Cryer, I believe it was LJ Cryer, doesn't get hurt in that Sweet 16 game.
Jamal Shead.
Yeah, Jamal Shead. If he doesn't get hurt in that Sweet 16 game, Duke probably loses.
Yeah.
That's fair to say. So I think last year's team, it's fair to say that was a second weekend team, not a Final Four team, but they got a good draw. Things broke their way. Obviously, you don't want to see guys get hurt. But with the injury, allowed Duke to go to the Elite Eight. And then they were staring down an 11 seed, one of the biggest Cinderellas in NCAA tournament history, and had a lead on them for 20 minutes and collapsed in the other 20 minutes. And now here in this season, it was national championship or bust, because everyone talked about how down the ACC was, and that was proven time and time again that the conference wasn't great. So your expectation was to win the conference outright, and they did that, and then go prove how good you are in the NCAA tournament. And they did that, blowing out Mount St. Mary's and Baylor. Arizona made it tough on them late, kind of similar to what we saw against Houston, where Arizona pushed them, and then they blow out Alabama in the Elite Eight. So this team did not meet its expectations as like the other 2 seasons did, just because the expectation was a national championship. Now, had they lost this game another way, we could be having a much different tone. But the fact that they lost this way, being up by 6 with under a minute to go, being up by 9 with under 2 minutes to go, being up by 14 with 8 minutes to go, it just has a much different tone the way this season ended than the previous 2 did for Jon Scheyer when you reflect back on those seasons.
Yeah, I still have such an appreciation that the Duke basketball program standard is to be able to get to a national championship game every single season and to win one of these things. I mean, 18 Final Fours, really crazy that we've been able to go to that many, and hopefully there are more and more to come in the years to follow for Jon Scheyer. Unfortunately, it's just not going to be the 6th national championship. Now it's a decade plus since Duke basketball won their final title. Maybe we would have been able to bring it to an end 2015 to 2025. Now we know, dang, man, 365 some more days until there's another national championship game to be played after this one, and a hope that Duke could be back there atop the college basketball world once again. Everybody was picking. Duke was the outright betting favorite to get it done, even once we got here to Final Four weekend.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other way to spin that. And JJ, I think, at least in recent memory, you look at some of the heartbreaking losses that Duke has suffered in the NCAA tournament. And I'm not going to throw in last year against NC State just because kind of what the reasons that I mentioned. That wasn't a championship team. That team wasn't going to win a national championship if they ran into Purdue or Alabama or Connecticut in the Final Four. They were going to lose. I think the two you look at are 2019 against Michigan State in the Elite Eight, and you look at 2022 against North Carolina in the Final Four. Now, I think everyone thought those two teams were capable of winning a national championship, especially that team with Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett, Cam Reddish, Trey Jones in 2019. And if they had made the Final Four, again, just like this, anything could happen. You don't know if they're going to win it. But it felt like this year's team was more championship worthy than those two teams.
Yes.
This team had more of the pieces. This team seemed like it had put it together. This team did not have many lapses throughout the season like those two teams did. Again, when you look back on it, you could see some of the writing on the wall, especially with the matchups in 2022 against Carolina and how they beat them in the regular season finale at Cameron Indoor, and then they meet them again in the NCAA tournament. And one thing I just want to add with that is in those two games against Michigan State in 19 and Carolina in 22, something happened that forced Duke to lose. Like Caleb Love hits the big three-pointer to put Carolina in front by 4. Off the top of my head, I can't remember who made the shot from Michigan State, but it was a three-pointer that just about iced the game or put Michigan State up 2 or 3 or whatever it was. This game, you didn't have that. There wasn't that big moment from Houston that capped off this comeback. It was, yes, the three-pointer that made it a 3-point game, the dunk that made it a 1-point game, but then, and we haven't brought up the referees, and I think that's a good thing, but it was a questionable at best foul call on Cooper Flagg, a 52% free throw shooter making both ends of a 1-and-1, and then Cooper Flagg missing. And one thing that'll bring up, the end of the game, when Duke's down 3, I think there's 3.7 seconds left.
Yep.
And Duke was coming out of the timeout before when Cooper Flagg missed. And as a head coach, you're going through all the scenarios that are going to happen. And once the second free throw goes through, you have to take your time, look over to the bench, see what Jon Scheyer is calling. I couldn't believe they threw the ball the length of the floor.
Right.
I mean, there was still 3.7 seconds left. In practice, you go over those scenarios a lot. Why didn't they run a play? It wasn't like there was only 1 second left or a second and a half, and you were looking for a heave and a prayer. Like, you still had 2 to 3 dribbles left.
I thought for certain the ball would be stolen and that there wouldn't even be able to be any form of an attempt to play.
Yeah, I mean, after the scramble, Tyrese Proctor got his hands on it and kind of threw it behind his back.
Yeah,
because he just knew the ball had to go up to the rim and he shot it over the backboard. And for all Tyrese Proctor's fault in this game, I'm not blaming him for that.
He had to do it.
But the fact that they didn't run a play in that final sequence. Now, if they run a play, does Houston foul them? I don't know, but if they do, you run your risk of taking that chance, and whoever they foul, you make the first free throw, and then you intentionally miss the second, and you put your big boys out on the line, and probably Pat Dongba and Kamad Malawatch, or even Cooper Flagg, and try to tip it back in. But the fact that they did not run a play and didn't even give themselves the chance to go to the free throw line and try and convert one of those crazy Trey Jones-like scenarios, that I couldn't understand either. And just kind of adding to how Jon Scheyer had a really bad night. That out of all the coaching decisions, I mean, people talk about Jon Scheyer should have drawn up a better play for that final shot for Cooper Flagg. I was more befuddled that they didn't run a play with 3.7 seconds left on the clock to try to draw something up and give themselves a chance instead of throwing it the length of the floor on the inbounds. Yeah,
dude, related. It just, I go back to the Leitner shot. I can't believe that you're able to do something like that. That pass was not intercepted. And with 2.1 seconds left, or what Duke's able to, I mean, just crazy, because I felt like, just to your point, throw it a little bit closer to half court and dribble a little bit, try to get into an action there and get yourself some separation and create a better look. All right, let's wrap up here. Now what? The season's over. The year has come to a close. We are seeing Cooper Flagg kind of sweep all of these Player of the Year awards over Auburn's Janai Broome, which is great to see, and deservedly so with the year that he's put together. Now he's headed off to the NBA. So many others are. Several guys on the Duke basketball team have run out of college eligibility. They can't play anymore. You got to be heavy in the transfer portal now and starting to figure out what this freshman class looks like as well.
No, I agree. But you look at things, and Duke, at least publicly, wasn't very active once the transfer portal opened a couple of weeks ago. And there have been some big names that have come into the portal and have been signed already. I mean, now people had said, oh, Duke had interest in this person. They didn't have interest in this person. And I'm sure more names will go into the transfer portal over the next several days. I think up until the end of April, around, I don't know why the 22nd sticks out in my head of where I think you can't enter the transfer portal anymore. So there will still be names. And Duke's, I mean, NIL is not a thing with Duke. Like, don't worry about figures and anything you see on social media. If they want a player, they can go out and get the player. But in terms of their roster, I think some of the biggest names you have to watch are Tyrese Proctor. I mean, he has everything open to him. He could go in the transfer portal. He could declare for the NBA draft. He could return to Duke for a senior year. Isaiah Evans, I think that's another big name that you're certainly going to have to watch. And what is he going to do? I'd be surprised if he goes into the portal. I mean, for his spurt ability, people had started talking about the NBA draft with him. I don't think he's necessarily ready to
Not
be
ready. Yeah, come back.
I could see him back on this roster. I think the real surprise throughout the end of this season, especially with Malik Brown being injured, was Pat Gongba.
Yeah.
And I think, and JJ, we've talked about this, you envision a front court of Cameron Boozer and Pat Gongba, you might have yourself something really working there in the front court. So I think he's a big piece to return. And then one name we haven't mentioned, because I think it was almost a foregone conclusion a month ago, Caleb Foster wasn't going to be back on this team next season, just with how things didn't develop for him in a sophomore season. And then all of a sudden, in comes the ACC tournament, the NCAA tournament, and he's a key contributor on this team.
That's a big part, yeah.
Even though he doesn't play in the final really half, I think he got a minute or so in that second half against Houston. So I think that's another big name to watch as well. I know Duke's still in some recruiting battles, maybe adding one more freshman to its roster. And then, all eyes turn to the transfer portal, because let's be honest, Jon Scheyer hit a grand slam with the transfer portal additions this year in Sion James, in Malik Brown, in Mason Gillis, who we haven't brought up. And I know a lot of people are saying his technical kind of swung the momentum of the game. And yes, it did. But even with that technical, Duke still led by 9 points with under 2 minutes to go. And they still led by 6 points with under a minute to go. So yes, while that was a big turning point in the game, there were still many ways to close this game out for Duke.
It felt like a million times Duke was going to win, and they didn't. And so now what? We turn our attention to next season, and we're going to have plenty of conversations about it here on the program. And Kevin, you'll have some at the website as well. Tell people how they can support you.
Yeah, Ball Durham, we're all over the fallout here from this major collapse for Duke. Come follow us over at Ball_Durham on X. And then come read us every single day. We'll have great content up throughout the month of April and into the offseason as we track the developments of these current players on the roster in the transfer portal. And obviously, we'll still be on top of any high school recruiting. That's over at balldurham.com. So even though the season has come to an end, we're still on top of it over there at balldurham.com.
Always appreciate the time. Always love another basketball season of conversations in the books with you, Kevin. And now we get a chance to jump into off-season mode. So thanks for being here today, man.
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Kevin Connelly from Ball Durham joining us here on today's program. That brings our show today to a close. It's heartbreaking that the year is over, but on to the next one. Now we get ready for Duke basketball going into the next season. We'll talk about the aftermath and what's to come throughout the rest of the week. Please be sure to follow us wherever it is that you get your podcast. Subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Follow us on YouTube. Like this video. Share it with your friends. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we're on X at LO_Blue Devils. Find us on TikTok and Instagram as well. That'll do it. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.